Good morning in some parts of the country, I think. Um, my name is Cecil Bullard. I am the founder of the Institute, and I have with me today Michael Smith, who is our chief strategist, and uh, I would also say presenter extraordinaire. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Today, this is an Ask Me Anything, so if you are online with us and you want to ask questions, please put them in the comments and we will bring them in and do our best to get the answers. Today, I think I'd like to start us out, however, kind of talking about this this idea of the venture capitalists coming in and kind of taking over the industry. Consolidation is what we have. Michael, I think you and I have known each other now about 3 years, 3.5 years, and I think you're coming up on 2 years with the Institute.
Two and a half already. Can you believe it?
Yeah. Oh, time flies when you're having fun, right?
You're having fun.
When you're getting younger every day. Let's go back to maybe 2 years ago and compare. Venture capital is definitely coming in to the industry. I probably have 5 or 6 inquiries from mainly at this point what they call them a family practice, family office for potential purchase of the Institute because they want to be in the vertical, and they often talk about the vertical. And then I also get, I don't know, probably somewhere between 8 and 12 things from venture capital companies that are inquiries. In fact, I think I have a conversation tomorrow with one of them. Hey, we're in Canada and we're trying to consolidate up here in Canada, and we've kind of looked you up and we think you know a lot of stuff, so we'd like to talk to you. Often that leads to a quote unquote job opportunity on either on the board or as some kind of a consultant to them, for the marketplace. So go back 2 years ago and think about, where the industry, we thought the industry was going, where the industry is going, and then now look at it today and tell me your thoughts on, on that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And in fact, if you'll indulge me, I want to back up about a decade just for the start, if we can, and go back to the very first private equity guys that showed up at the table. And they had a vision, knowing in this industry, we were headed in the direction of what 50, 60 other industry verticals have gone down. The first one's on the ground. Maybe the one we all know best is Automotive out of Phoenix, put a stake in the ground decade-ish ago, something in that neighborhood.
About 10, 12 years, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And they bought a, reasonably smallish local shop that was underway and had some local presence and started. And the idea was to add to those are called the baseline or the platform companies that you start with, and then they make investments from there. And the idea is to just add scale. Scale takes your multiple up on an exponential basis when you go to sell the business. So there's a game afoot where the mom and pops, and I hesitate to call us that because I don't want to offend anybody with that, but from an investment perspective, we are a mom and pop industry, meaning we're mostly small, mostly privately held, mostly owner operated. And then the idea is to come sweeping in, buy up some kind of a regional starting presence of 5 to 10 to 15 shops, and then sell it to a bigger fish who then rolls up 4 or 5 of those and goes on. So that started a decade-ish ago with Sun. We knew it was coming. It's not a big surprise. Part of the reason I'm in this industry at this point was a decade ago, I got introduced to a 3-shop company that wanted to do something different. And so I kind of watched it coming. And so what happened was there was this great expectation that our industry was going to roll up quickly. And it hasn't gone as quickly as we thought. And Cecil, now I'm going to kind of jump into the next 5 to 2 years to kind of where we are today.
Yeah,
the sun showed up. Yeah, brother, go ahead. Yeah.
Before you go there, I want to clarify a couple of things. Okay.
Sure.
So you talked about the multiple, and So if I have one shop
Mhm.
net 10 or 12%, and I'm involved in the business day to day, and business isn't really growing much,
Mhm.
etc. What's my multiple? Okay, and
It
I
depends.
know that answer, but
Yeah,
what?
yeah. It depends on where your shop is, first of all. If you're in
Yeah,
a geographic region where there's immediate distance, geographic growth available for expansion is different than if you're rural. But let's just say you're in sort of the middle of all that. You would get maybe if it's, I'm going to say this, and this is part of what surprised private equity. In any industry vertical, you would imagine that maybe the middle of the bell curve would be a 7 to 8% profit margin. Maybe this 80th percentile would be a 12 to 15% profit margin. And the top shops or top companies in that industry, depending on the industry, if you're in the retail groceries, our margins aren't that high. But an industry like ours in the trades that are profitable, you could expect a 25, 30% profit margin, top 10%. Ours is a harder business than that. So I'm going to get to the answer to your question. The middle of the bell curve. So when I guess what I'm saying is when you're saying a 10 to 12% profit margin, you're not talking about a
that's
50th
on.
percent
No,
company.
that's on the higher end,
It's on the
right?
way higher end of our
Yeah,
bell curve. And so when my point is when they look in, the average shop will get a 2.5 to 2.75 EBITDA. Let's use net and EBITDA interchangeably. They are different numbers. EBITDA is a financial net number, which is more pure, if you will, but we use net. So let's talk nets, right? The average company at the top of our bell curve, halfway through the 235,000 companies, is a 2 to 3% profit margin. It's got 2 to 3 employees, and the owner doesn't take home a paycheck every day. So when we're
yeah.
talking about, yeah.
So I'm making net 40, net 50, maybe net 60,000. I've got a
Mhm.
60, 80,000 paycheck with a truck and insurance and gas and whatever
Yep.
else I managed
Yep.
to pilfer from myself. Um, you know, and I'm going to get a 2.5x maybe out of that,
You're going to get,
right?
you get a 2.5x. And if you, and here's what's going to hold you back. Here's what's going to be in your favor, that your nets are higher than normal. Here's what's not going to hold you in favor is the fact that you're still deep up to your neck in the business. And we
Okay.
have talked.
And
Yeah. Yep.
And so I don't want to dig way deep here. I just want to
Yeah.
kind of
I get
set the
it. Mhm.
stage. All right. So I've got a business that's doing, let's say, 650,000, two techs. By the way, that should be $1 million, million two business, two techs. But I know shops, and I know that many shops are stuck in the 657 range with two techs in their shop, and my net is 3, 4, 5%. I'm going to be lucky at that point to get a 2.5x.
You'll be
So
lucky to get 2.5. Yes, sir.
yeah, so I
Mhm.
have this shop that, and then I think that my parts and my tools, these tools that I've spent so much money on over my lifetime, etc. I'm thinking, well, geez, I've got $200,000-300,000 worth of tools at least, and
I know.
except they're worth 10 cents on the dollar in a buy, right? That's not where I
Yeah.
get my value. All right, so that's and by the way, that's what we would call a small business, right?
Yeah.
The mom and pop, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then we move up to let's say that I'm doing $1.5 million, all right,
Mhm.
and I'm net 10%. Plus, I get a salary out of the business, and I'm kind of not um, that involved. I mean, I'm not like writing service every single day. I'm still helping the master tech when he can't figure something out. I'm still writing some of the tickets. I'm still involved with the maybe we're home growing our financials, et cetera. And so now I'm going to sell that business, right?
Yep.
I'm still probably at the most a 3x.
3 to 3.25. Here's the extra quarter. If you really aren't in the business and you
Yeah.
really are working on it, meaning you can disappear for a week and nothing really substantially changes. If you have growth from revenue and profit on top of the three, you
Okay.
might get to a 3.25. Growth is a good thing in the investment business. You want to buy a growing business, not a shrinking one. Quality of leadership, stability of team. If you have high turnover, if you have toxic people in leadership, if you've got a problem that an investor is going to buy, they may walk in and say, tell you what, look, love the numbers. I'll give you 3.25 for the business contingent upon the due diligence study.
And
It's a
that's,
lot like,
and when you're
Mhm.
saying 3.25, we're not talking about $3,250,000.
Three,
We're talking about
3.25 times.
3.25x of my
Yeah.
net or EBITDA,
Your net.
right?
Right.
Net.
Yeah.
So now one more step. We're going to have a question here in a minute, but
I love it.
I just kind of want to follow this for a
Mhm.
second. Now, I've got a business doing, say, 4 million, and we're net 20, right?
Mhm.
I'm netting 20. I'm netting $1 million or 800,000 out of this business. I'm not working in the business at all,
Mhm.
really. I'm managing my managers, right? And that's we're going to call that one shop. It could be two $2 million shops, but we'll call it one. And now I'm going to sell that in the marketplace. What is the what's the X? We talking
We're
maybe
Yeah.
4x,
Yep. No,
maybe
I,
4.
I'd say you'd be a real stretch to get to 4. And again, this feels like real scale from our single shop perspective that we tend
Right.
to run historically. At the finance investment level, you're still very, very, very small. And
Yeah,
those numbers are a lot better than what we started with. They're a lot better, but they're not going to scale you to higher multiples yet. So maybe 3.5, maybe 3.75 if you can demonstrate stability over
Right.
time in these things. Getting to 4s, I mean, maybe
Right.
if you
Right.
have a
If
stellar
I
reputation.
wait if everything's perfect, to put the right plan together, if I wait long enough, etc. I may not have the runway to wait. But
Absolutely,
that's still, by the way, that's still small business.
it's still very small
Period.
business.
Right.
Mhm.
So now I've got 4 locations, and each location is doing, say, $2 million. I'm doing 8, maybe 10 million. I'm still net 20, 22, 24. I'm not involved in that business on a day-to-day basis. I have an area manager. I have managers in the stores, et cetera, et cetera. 4.5x,
That would be
5x.
no. I'd say 4.5 would be the range you're
Okay.
looking at, and it feels like we're growing a lot and crawling slowly, and that is absolutely true.
So one of the
Right?
things
Go on. Yep.
that I've recognized is that I know some deals that have been done where there were 10x, 12x, and some other opportunities in those deals. And I know you were involved in one of those. We're not gonna, we won't mention names and all of that stuff, but I don't see as many of those happening as I thought I would see happening at this point in time.
I think the private equity guys are not seeing. Cecil. There is $1 trillion and almost $500 of what they call a dry powder out there. $1.5 trillion in investors' hands, and these are big investors all the way down to small that can't find projects. So let me just say, to start my comment, they're dying for us to have projects, but here's where we don't have them. We don't have scaled 10 plus location type companies, 20 locations, 40 locations, 60 locations that they can sink their teeth into and get into with a 10 to 12 to 13, maybe even a 15 times EBITDA, because we haven't built that kind of scale yet. And the challenge, yeah, brother, go ahead.
So one of the things that you did in what you did was you brought 5 smaller players together and created a 40 location-ish offering, which moved the X up considerably.
Yeah,
right?
They immediately gained scale from each other by coming together into a group. Now, there's a downside to that too, is that the PE guys, the private equity investors, are buying 5 different transactions in a single transaction, if that makes sense. So the complication of implementation is multiplied by 5 within a single project, so that the multiples aren't as high as if you had a single company that brought 40, 50 locations to the table, right? There's pros and cons to all of this.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And so what I really kind of want to talk about here, and I still don't see the question. Maybe it's because my glasses aren't good enough. But if I'm a small business and I'm doing not a great job, I might be worth 2x. Okay, 2.2, 2.4, right? If I'm a medium-sized automotive shop, $1.5 million, $2 million, I might be worth 3.5x. If I'm a multi-location doing 10 million, I might be worth 4.5x. And I'd have to be a 40 to 50 or a combination where I brought in 40 or 50 shops with the right revenue in order to get an 8x, a 10x, and maybe even a 12x. Okay.
Yep.
And so what I have not seen is these companies that are out there buying shops, like talk about Sun, they went crazy twice. All right. They dumped a bunch of money. And then a few years later, they dumped a bunch more money into the Phoenix area, bought up a few hundred shops in that area. And now they seem to be not stalled, but certainly their growth is not, I think, what they thought their growth was going to be. And
Right.
there are fewer and fewer shops for them to buy. So I'm looking, yesterday I got an ad for a four-bay shop. I happen to know where it is. I happen to know who used to own it. But that shop is for sale for nickels. I mean, nickels. I could go buy it tomorrow, and that's because I got a couple of nickels and that's it. You know, if it was dimes, I'd be in trouble. But nobody's buying it, okay? Because it doesn't have any real value, because it doesn't have the organization, the structure, the systems, the processes, the clients.
Right.
And what I'm thinking is happening in our industry is a separation of these are the good shops and these are the shops that are not so good. And even in that, I think the smart investor, whether it's private equity or family office or whatever, they're not buying the not so good shops.
No.
Because they don't see a path through those shops to where they want to go.
They're not buying. Let me just build on something we're talking about here. Every private equity project would like to start with this platform company in a geographic region, right? So you'd like to have
Phoenix, Atlanta, whatever,
10, 20, 30 shops in a big city, and you buy that thing right up front, and now you have a presence in the city. So that you pay a big price for. The owner, founder, operators tend not to go away in those. They become partners in the private equity project. At that point,
they become private equity investors in their own lives.
They do in their own companies, and they don't go away, because here's the theory: that 30 shop system becomes the system that you then buy 10 shop systems until the market's empty. Then you buy 5 shop systems till the market's empty. Then you buy 2 shop systems, and each of those, Cecil, back to our point, are getting less sophisticated, more work and implementation, a lot more upgrade needed to become to the level of the private equity project. And so the value of those companies, your regional investment there is going down over time as you add scale, and you're dumping that work, and it's not in a bad way, it's an intentional way, on the shoulders of the platform people who are on the ground there. And so they may keep all the separate brands for a while of all the acquisitions, but over time, the original brand on the ground will be rebranded there in the region, or the private equity overall brand will be rebranded across the board. Those are the iterations that Sun went through. They would buy a 20, 30 shop system if they could find it in a region, and then they end up at some point buying onesies and twosies that aren't at the same level of their investments, but that's all that's left in a market. That's the natural flow.
The dregs, right? The dregs are there.
Yeah, and we don't even want to call them that, because it's just no, I'm with you, and I'm not being critical of the word. There are great shops that are single shops that are run on a one-off basis that are running consistent growth over time, have a very strong team. The owner is sitting and maintaining a good leadership team that runs it for them.
But you're still not going to get a 8x out of that.
No, you're not. And those are few and far between.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So no matter where you are, bell curve, brother, go ahead. Yeah.
I got this weird, like, there's $1.5 trillion worth of powder in the gun, you know, and there's all these shops that are closing or disappearing or being sold for the littlest of money to the service advisor or the ex-partner or whatever. And I thought, 2 years ago, I thought, oh my gosh, the private equity is going to come in and just suck those up, right? So give me the incoming question. What are your thoughts on sharing a corporate office with other like-minded shop owners? That, by the way, that's from Issa Tola. I hope I got that right from pronunciation. And that is like the perfect question, because that's what we have are working on, and that's what you've already accomplished. So
Yep.
I'll let you answer that better
Yeah,
than
that's a great question, and let me run with it. The idea here is that if you have a, like as I mentioned before, if you have a single organization with a leadership team that's been in place long enough to prove that it's a real leadership team, which has then comes with it a centralized corporate office, you have the best chance of getting the best multiple in the market that you're in. A step along the way, ISA or ISA, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, is what you're talking about. If you had other shops and you started to build a sort of a co-op of some of the things that you could share together, you're on track to potentially having, if you will, a co-op of shops that could go to market together. The co-op of shops is what we took to market with the project that I did. The best deal those guys could have made, and we talked about it, was to have them become a single company with a single leadership group and a single set of, down to the grinding level of SOPs, right? Doing it all the same way with single systems and all. That here's the risk you take, though, and this is what we're here for, right? To look at the pros and the cons of this. The pros are you do that, you get your best outcome. The cons are, what if by the time you're done building, a couple things bad can happen, right? Some of the partners that get into this don't do their piece. Anybody in school remember doing team projects? And some of the people didn't do any work at all, and some people did all the rest of the work to get the grade. This is what you run up against, right? So here's the risk, is that you put all that cost into building a single entity, then it doesn't function because you don't have control anymore. Huge issue in our in business is you are the owner operator, you make all the decisions. And one of my first conversations with folks doing all this roll-up stuff is, you realize that when you make this transaction, you ain't the boss anymore. And they're like, what? And it's like, no, you don't have 51% of your company anymore. Now you have a committee. Now you have a board. Now you may have a controlling group that isn't you, who's going to tell you ultimately what you're going to do, whether you like it or not, if push comes to shove. And people are like, well, wait, I can't work for anybody else. I'm the master of my destiny. The reason I have this shop is because I don't want to be, an employee. It's like, well, that's a big mindset to get your head around. So back to the question, shared services are fantastic, and shared services are a good first step toward kicking the tires on your potential future business partners. Another thing to do is to have a peer group locally of your potential business partners where you guys spend time building relationships with each other. Have it be a local peer group of very select people where you guys help each other improve each other's businesses. The background gain in that is that you're standardizing the way you do things by best practice over time. That gets you closer to being able to roll it up into a roll up local single operation that you could sell to private equity for the multiple, right? Scale gets you higher multiples in private equity.
I also think you're driving performance, because when you're comparing yourself against other like shops, and you're saying well, wait a minute, you raised your labor rate $25 an hour, I can raise my labor rate, and by the way, I'm going to go 30 because I'm going to be higher than you, blah blah blah. We see this happen like where there's a kind of a competitive nature to the group, and a competitive nature which does at least subtly have a tendency to drive result, right?
Yep.
Other than I'm kind of in this world by myself, and I've got my own blinders on because I don't know what I don't know, right?
Now there's a danger. I want to speak to a danger zone right here, which is the danger of having price and market conversations with companies that could be considered price fixing if you're not careful. And this is not dodging the rules, it's being aware of them, right? If you're in a peer group scattered across the country and you're comparing labor rates, it's a lot safer within an industry than if you have a concentration of people in the same town having the same conversation. I'm not saying you're playing any games here with the law. I'm saying we don't, right? We need to be aware of it.
As a consultant, okay, I have labor rate has been one of my big things, because I took labor rate from 1980, where I was in Palm Springs, California, and I multiplied that times 3% every year until, I don't know, this year. And the labor rate I would have today is it's real close to 270. It's like 268 and change an hour.
Mhm.
And yet
Mhm.
the industry average, I think the last survey that was done was 128, right?
Right.
So we're at least probably 30, 35, maybe even 50% below where we really ought to be as an industry. And it's almost like we're afraid to have a labor rate conversation because we're afraid that somebody's listening and they're going to say, I raised my labor rate, you should probably raise yours. The whole industry we can't bring good techs in. We can't afford to pay them what they need to be paid. I'm getting these things from shops and hey, what do you think? I'm going to hire a C tech. I'm going to pay that guy $22 an hour. My range is between 22 and 24. Well, wait a minute. McDonald's is paying 27.
Yep.
So how am I going to get a tech, other than somebody that's either not very bright or
Mhm.
somebody that just loves cars, right? And they want to do it no matter what it takes. How are
Yep.
we going to fill the gap if we can't pay a living wage to the people coming into our industry, right? And we
Yep.
can't pay a living wage because we don't charge enough to pay a living wage.
Yep.
Well, the guy down the street, he's only at $100 an hour, and we got. I have a couple of storage units. Moved the house. We put some stuff in storage, and I'm moving out of one of the storage units this weekend. And I'm there most of the day Saturday, on and off, like 4 or 5 times. We made trips, closed the storage unit out. There's a guy working out of a storage unit 2 units down, and he works on 3 cars that day. He's doing automotive service and repair out of a storage unit, right?
Mhm.
And I know there's Cecil's ADHD kicking in, right? Here I am, I'm way over here. But I don't care what your labor rate is. I just know that that our labor rates have to go up in this industry, or we are going to have a lot of shops that are just going to be gone.
Well, and let me lean into the backside of what you're saying too. I'm going to take it to a strategic level. I believe I've been in this industry a decade at this point. After 35 years before
You
that,
can't be
in
that
60
old.
other
You
verticals.
can't be
I
that
know.
old, brother.
Believe it? I'm actually older than you are. Don't tell anybody, right? So no, but here's my point. I think we have a self-image issue in our industry, and I'm going to say it straight up to everybody listening here. I wish you knew how much I think of you, having grown up in 50 other industry verticals in the big consulting firms. When I work with my clients, the single shop folks, the triple shop folks in this industry, I tell you all the time, you guys are some of the best business people I've ever met in my life. And I get these looks across the table like you're joshing me, right? This is a joke. Is this a dad joke that there's a punchline coming? It's like, no. This is a fact. The business we all run here is one of the most complicated businesses in the world that I've had my fingers on. Again, 50, 60 industry verticals consideration. And I'm going to tell you that when you do this business well, I tell people all the time, you give me 10 top shop owners, I'll put them up against a C-suite in any Fortune 100 company on a competition basis, and we're going to win. And you guys look back at me like I'm from another planet. I am telling you the truth. And I say that from the standpoint, when we look at the marketplace and downgrade our thinking that, well, they couldn't possibly pay that much in the market. I'm telling you straight up, if your value proposition, not competing on price, and if we had a microeconomic conversation, I would tell you every time, do not compete locally in your market on the basis of low price. Don't do it. There's only one winner in that game. It's the cheapest price, and everybody playing that game is on your way out of the industry. What I will say is develop your value proposition so that you understand that what your customers get from you and the utility that you bring back to their life and including their ROI on the repairs that you do, the return on investment, that you have a story to tell. And when you believe in your story, and Cecil, I'm backing you up now with labor rates, you're going to realize we're not charging enough for the value that we bring back to the economy. Guys, do you realize that without us, the economy ain't going to function? We
At
are the
all.
transportation baseline that keeps people going to work. It keeps kids going to soccer games. It keeps professionals in their trucks going to service other companies, et cetera. Without us, this economy grinds to a halt. Why do you think in COVID we were called, we were part of those the exception? Yeah, we were essential companies that were allowed to keep functioning because we're critical. So we got to remember that we hold that status and place in our economies. And I want all of us to think more highly of ourselves. I'm just telling you, I meet owners day after day, over and over, who really question their skill and question kind of what they're worth in the market. And I'm saying, guys, we need a brand new way of thinking about this. And I want to encourage you here. If you can hear me, please hear me clearly. You're as good as people get in the business world. I'm telling you right now.
So I have been coaching in this industry. I've been in the industry my entire adult life. All right. Actually, you could say I've been in the industry my entire life, but actively doing some job within this industry my entire adult life. And I've been in coaching for coming up on 25 years. Okay. And my experience, my depth of knowledge, the guys that we have that are building value, talking about value, creating value proposition, are able to charge more in their businesses. They're attracting a better client. So, there's that, when you're talking to shop owners, they're like, I'd really like to work on Porsches. And you're like, oh, that's wonderful if it's the first or second owner. When you get to the third owner or the fourth owner, you have somebody that bought a Porsche that can't afford to necessarily fix it. Those are not the best customers, right?
No.
And so the guys that are building this great value proposition and able to help their customers understand that value proposition are the ones that are most successful, most long-term successful. And they're the ones that are probably going to walk away with a 5X, a 6X, or maybe even a 10X if they are putting themselves together with, enough shops or enough shop owners to make it worth the while of the venture capital company, if that's who they're going to sell to.
Yeah.
And
new question incoming, Cecil. Let me add this one.
Bring her in. Bring her in.
It's one of the things that I have a group that I help understand what it takes to reinvest in your company like an investor. And what it means is, instead of thinking like an owner operator, we think like an investor and think, how do we build value in our company that will be recognized by the marketplace we're talking right now. On the short list of many, many things that we consider and develop over time are two critical things, right? One of them is, are you working in the business or are you working on the business? And if you are in the business, you're reducing the value of what you have, because the minute you sell it, they have to replace you, and your profit margins that you demonstrate trying to build your value around are going to hold up in their hands because they have to replace you. The second thing is, how do you do that? You have to have a leadership team and a team under them that is rock star enough to do this the way you would do it without you having to be there. And so you have to invest in your people. You got to get toxicity out of your company. You have to have a strong team. And when you have that, then it leans into a third category, which is you can draw the loyal brand ambassador customers, the best customers out of the market and into your hands, that you can then sell that with your company to the next owner, right? The next investor. It's investment perspective. Those three things are not typical in our industry. We are so technician centric. We're running a company like a machine. We get the cars in the front desk. We get them out the end of the day. We've done our job for the day. That is not building an investment grade company. That is building an operating company that has
fixing cars.
Fixing cars. Can you believe
fixing
it?
cars is not what this is about. Okay. I mean, ultimately, cars have to be fixed, but that is not what this is really all about, right? No. Not if you want to have an easier life, not if you want to make more money, not if you want to support the people that are in your company. And I think it's almost always about building a team. Michael Aragorn, please give us the next question. Blake, I know Blake. Have you seen situations where an owner not involved in the day-to-day ops sells to his general manager or management team? Yeah, lots of times. But here's what I see mostly. I see it's not done well, it's not planned well, and it's kind of more of a last minute thing than a 5-year plan to make the best out of this, because too many owners are taking 10% down, or not anything down, because the service advisor, manager, whatever, has not built the money to come in and buy it, and then they're taking payments on a business that actually wasn't really set up well to run and be successful in the long run anyway. And so, yes, I've been involved with several of those. One in Denver, where we built a plan. I think at the time we had 4 shops, and we built a plan with the general manager that if we got to 7 shops, that he would actually own a certain percentage so that he could go to the bank, get the money to buy, the principal out. And it went fantastically well, but it was a 7-year plan. It wasn't it's time for me to get out. I'm old, I'm tired, and now I'm going to sell my business. And I'm looking around, and who can I sell it to? Well, I've got a GM or a management team. And so that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, Blake,
I don't know.
I'm going to join Cecil on this and say that your question is based on my experience here in the decade I've been hanging around. That's the way it's usually done. Is that an owner will sell to what we call a key employee, general manager, management team, if it's an MBO, management buyout kind of a thing. That's the way it's mostly been done historically. The thing is, the gap I think that I see looking back, that I even see today, is this idea of succession planning ahead of time, and what Cecil was leaning into. And I'll put it this way: like, there's the world that we exist in today ain't as cheap as it used to be. So let's be real, right? What it takes to buy a business today and get an SBA loan and to be able to prove that you're going to be able to pay this thing off, it's nice to sell to a key employee, but do you want to own or finance this over time? So let me unpack this for a minute for us, okay? If you're going to sell this over time to a key employee, don't you want to make sure that they're as competent as possible to take it from you, do at least as well as you did, if not better, in their hands, so that you assure that what you want out of the company is actually going to come to you? I can't imagine anything worse than you thinking you're retired. 3 years from now, your key employee is overwhelmed and tanks the business, and now you get your business back because they didn't pay you for it, right? You get it back, it's broken, and out of retirement, now you have to come back and rebuild it before you can sell it to the next person. Let me add to that one more consideration. The world that we live in is getting more complex overnight because of the stuff we started talking about today. The consolidators are here. When they build scale around you in your town, and you're the one shop left that only is a single shop, they're buying their parts cheaper than you are. They're buying their oil cheaper than you are. They're recruiting cheaper than you are. They're marketing cheaper than you are. So you can say, look, I'm an old guy, old gal. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to sell it to my key employee, traditional flow. Get out of the way. I'll take 10% down if they can afford it. Let them pay it out over a decade or two. You know what? Their life in the next 10 years is the one you're avoiding. They're not going to get away from this stuff. We're at the edge of everything changing, and it's starting to happen in a deeper sense now. If they inherit that from you without the skills to succeed in it, and you've owner financed it, there are a lot more people going to be getting broken companies back in the future than there were historically. Not scaring anybody, just saying, guys, this ain't the same world. The next 20 years is not going to look anything like the last 20 in terms of what the dynamics are. So these are just all things to keep in mind as we're thinking about this. So.
I think it's pretty, to me, it's exceptionally interesting. Because, venture capital's not going away. The family office is not going away. They want a piece of this pie, and they're already 3 or 4 pretty healthy ones in the industry, active. Some of them have hundreds and hundreds of shops at this point in time, and they want to increase that and, get their multiples and all of that. And so that's not going to go away. And I'm not saying that it's not necessarily a good idea to sell to an employee or even a family member, but holy smokes, if they're not trained up, I mean, it's bad enough. I had somebody ask me the other day, I said, Cecil, if there's only one thing that you could train in the automotive industry, that couldn't do anything else, just one thing, what would you do? And I said, I'd train them on their financials, their numbers, right? Just what should the shop make? What's my gross profit? How should I pay my, technicians, et cetera, et cetera. Because you can't make money or you can survive. And there's a lot of shops surviving, but there's also a lot of shops failing. And there are some shops that are soaring like eagles. And frankly, those are the shops that have really they built their team, they have their systems and process, they understand what they have to do as far as I have to charge this so that I can pay that, so that I can cover this. And I think that the world is changing even more dramatically here. And I think faster. And I'm reading a book, Unreasonable Hospitality. I think every business owner, I don't care what industry you're in, ought to read that book, because I think that sets us apart from everyone else in the thing. And we were having an argument yesterday amongst several of us. You were kind of online, but I think you didn't get involved in much of that. But
Too bad. I like.
Are we talking about, price as one of the factors of I'm picking the shop, based on price? Are we talking about that value proposition, that hospitality, the way I feel when I'm involved with that particular business or shop? That's the thing that keeps people coming back to your business over and over consistently. And man, if we don't figure this out as an industry, I would say, I think we're going to lose 30 to 40% of the shops in this industry in the next 10 years. And I don't know, man, if somebody wants to bet me money, I would seriously consider putting money on that from everything I've seen. All right, next question, Michael.
Real quick, let me add a stat to this and keep the question up. And let me add a stat to this. If you guys can stay attuned just 1 second. Let's talk about our cousins in the collision business, right? 30 to 40% estimate of market share is in the hands of 5 giant companies in collision. 70% estimated net profit in the industry is in the hands of 5 companies. Imagine that the margin that they've taken from the small players, like we're talking about here in our industry, is in their hands now. You're up against them in terms of your ability to compete. So this is real time. This is not the furniture business. This is car related, right? This is the collision cousin that we have, and that's where they stand as an industry. So we ain't avoiding this. We're going there whether we like it or not. Just to finish, to put a bullet behind your point, right? So
okay. So this is not necessarily different if you ask me, but Corey Knight. Hey Corey, how you doing? Once you combine with a central corporate office, I think that's supposed to be corporate. Are you then opening up to a liability for some other shop's malpractice? First of all, holy crap, we don't understand in this industry what our liability is. I don't know. I mean, of all the shop owners I know, and I know thousands and thousands of shop owners, right? I could name on 2 hands the number of shop owners that understand their liability. The liability that we have is unbelievable, if you ask me. I don't know, frankly, and maybe Michael, you can help me out here. I don't know that, having a central corporate office changes anything or creates any additional liability than what I might have. And if I'm having cars come from other shops that are not done correctly, or were not fixed right, or weren't diagnosed properly, or whatever, I think if I document well where we started and where we're going, that I think my liability gets less and less and less, right? And I don't know, Michael, what would you say about having a corporate office and creating liability?
This is a fantastic question, and I'll say this about liability. Investors will look at risk management, and this is that risk management simply in their terms means managing future liabilities, right? The risk that's inherent in our businesses. We can be smart and manage the risk ourselves as much as we can. In other words, you control your quality inside your own company. If you put a corporate office down who provides services to you in the background, you can be insulated in your company by buying services on contract from a central corporate office that you build as a separate company under it's different from you, right? So Bob, who's your peer in buying services from the corporate service company, does something stupid that doesn't roll through the service company to you. That's still going to be Bob's problem, and it may be the service company's problem because they helped them make a mistake, but that shouldn't necessarily roll over to you. A lot of this comes down to the legal structure that you build this under and who are your partners. And I'm going to take it back just to the quality program. The reason that things like SOPs exist in corporate groups is to standardize process so that you can avoid making dumb mistakes on an individual location basis and standardize. I'll say this, right? When Mercedes makes a car, they drive it to the end of the production line and then they test it. And if something's broken on the car that doesn't work right in the factory, they fix it and then they send it to the market. Toyota does the same thing, but when they find something that doesn't work right, they fix it and send it to the market, but they also go back down the production line, figure out where it got broken in the first place, fix how it got broken on the production line so it never gets broken again. Those are two different mentalities about how you run a quality program. Cecil, you
One
want
of
to
the
speak?
oh man, I just we as an industry, we as an industry don't ever fix the problem that created the problem. We don't have time. We're too busy trying to fix the car and get the car out to solve the problem. So to me, that's huge. And corporate structure is really, really important when you get past, I think from the beginning, you certainly don't want to be a sole proprietor.
Yep.
And you don't want to have your property in the same business as you have your shop. And, you want to probably have a corporate office that has a separate corporation, because you're creating layers of, you're not invincible, but every time there's a layer, it's more difficult for someone to come after you, the CEO of the company, the board, the shareholder, et cetera. And so I think structure matters a ton. In fact, we've just spent, 6 months and a lot of money with lawyers creating new structures so that we can kind of get to the next level with the Institute. And I have found it fascinating, the nuances and the tax advantages and all the other stuff that go along with that. I think it's exciting to me. All right. Last question. I guess we must be getting towards the end. I'd like to wrap it up a little too. So, Carrie Rivas, we hope to sell our shop to one of our 3 children who currently works in the business. If selling to him today, how would you determine the value of the business, not including the building? Would that be 3 times net? No, it wouldn't necessarily be. It's a wonderful question. First of all, I wouldn't sell to him today unless I had a plan 3 to 5 years ago that explained how that all works, right? And so here at the Institute, Kent, my son, who is a viable and valuable part of the company, we started planning, I don't know, we're probably 4 years into this, maybe 5. And he now has some interest in the company. I think it'll be 20% at the end of this year, because we're going to hit our, one of those milestones that we put in play. And so essentially we have set him up to be able to buy the business no matter what the X is, right? And obviously in what we do, the X's are different than, say, an automotive shop. And so there are so many factors that would say 3X or 4X or 5X or 1X. And those are the things that are going to really play, I think, to the sale of the shop. And you might say to yourself, well, this is my kid. I'm going to give him or her a discount. Fine, great. But man, there's so much kind of involved with this. They work in the business. What do they do? Do they understand the business? That coaching and training thing too. If you want them to be successful, stuff we talked about today, that idea of creating a team, having the systems and processes, moving your business forward so your net is not 3%, your net is 12, 15, 18, 22. All of those things play in the real value of your shop. And I believe also whether or not it's going to be successful long-term, whether you're there or your son or your daughter's there or one of your top people's there, or you end up selling it to, Billy Bob management, whatever company.
I want to add to this too. When you get done, I want to add to this. I know we're.
No, I'll be done. You add.
Yeah. Now, let me just say, this is a conversation I have a lot with owners, beginning the conversation of, how are we going to get out of this in the optimized way? And regardless of who you sell it to, it's similar questions. Assuming you can sell your business for a profit, a capital gains profit in your life, how do you set that up so that you pay the right amount of taxes, but that you minimize your tax liability? How do you set it up in a family situation, particularly with 3 kids, like you mentioned? And it's a great question. What about the other 2 kids? Do they get a stake in the business? Don't they? What's the stake? How do you transfer it? What's the tax implication to them versus you? One of the conversations I always have is start at the end, like how much time do you have and how much do you need out of the business to retire, parents? Then what are you selling to the kids in terms of the business, and who's going to take what stake and what's their outcome? I will say this about trusts as an example. Trusts are a great tool to use. You may or may not have one, questioner, but for all of you out there, trusts aren't considered valid by the US government until they're over 12 months old. So you can't set up a trust and 3 months later sell your company to somebody and have it be covered and handled under the trust. So you've got some long-term planning to do, is my point. So and we do this helping people with these kinds of conversations all the time. Don't do it by random. Don't do it by chance, if you will. Put some strategy thinking into it, and have, again, Cecil mentioned it, have your kids be ready to take the business from you, 1, in terms of passion, but 2, in terms of competency, emotional setup, right? Maturity. Make sure that you hand it to them so they can succeed, so that you're not handing them a problem. And again, this is different for every company, but all I'm saying is some of us get tired. We get to the end of the road. I just want to be out of this. I want to sell it to family and be done with it. Please don't do it without really digging into some of the side details. It could be very impactful on everybody involved. Brother, go ahead.
Yeah, what you don't know can cost you and your kids tens of thousands, hundreds, even millions of dollars. Now, I need to make a short comment here. We had a client that owns 2 shops at the time and 3 kids who didn't want anything to do with the business. Okay, they watched dad work his butt off for years, and for whatever reason, either dad didn't manage them well, or dad wasn't nice at work, or they thought dad worked too hard. Whatever it was, they didn't want to have anything to do with the business. We brought them to a leadership intensive. These kids are on fire. They want nothing more than to take this business over and grow this business because they've seen what the opportunity is and how to do it. And we've also worked with dad and mom on how do we help the kids do this and how do we need to deal with it. I'm not always the nicest guy to my kids. They're the ones that I can be the hardest on, and I'm probably going to be the hardest on. And, sometimes I need somebody to say, hey, Cecil, maybe if you approached it this way and did it this way, it would be much better for your relationship with your kids, and you'd come out in a much better way. And I just think that's extremely valuable. I want to spend just 5 minutes here. I know we're getting to the end. 2026, Michael, what do you think for shops? What do you think it looks like?
2026 for shops, we have geopolitical instability that we're settling through on the planet at this point. I'm not being political. I'm just saying in the bigger macro
it is what it is.
It is what it is. And there are some people who are sort of holding back a little bit, making big long-term decisions, waiting to see what the long-term looks like. And so let's just put that on the table, number 1. Number 2, economically, we're stable at this point. Stock market's doing great. Investment funds are backed up and ready to invest. I asked the private equity firms, how do you guys plan forward into uncertainty? And they said, well, it's not as complicated as you think. We don't do a bunch of modeling. We look back and we say, over the last 100 years, what are the trends that have been successful so far? And we're going to tend to stay with them until something catastrophic or radical happens and we have to change that strategy. So all the little side questions of, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? At the investment level, they're like, we're going to assume it's largely going to be the same. And we're going to go ahead and keep investing up to our eyeballs. And for 100 years, it's worked with all the world wars and all the changes. That model works all the way through, right? So from that perspective, what does 26 look like? Money's waiting to be invested. We're aging out as the boomers. The boomers are at least 2/3 of the owners in our industries, if not more. Many of the kids aren't fully prepared for succession yet. Your key leaders aren't as ready as succession ready as you might hope that they would be. So if you're getting out, make sure you know the pathway out. There are private equity opportunities to sell into investment systems to have a little more as an owner in your pocket when you're done. How do you handle the shop and the real estate in your 2 different hands? There are strategies for this. So Cecil, 2026 26 is, big, hairy, audacious goals. Think bigger than we tend to think. Get your teams and leaders ready to go big with you, and look forward and plan for the options, plan for the opportunities, and be more creative than we've been historically about what you could pull off. And I'm going to say to you, there are support structures, and I'll brag on ours. We're doing stuff that I don't know anybody else that we compete with is doing, but we've been there, done that. And it's not a sales pitch. I'm just telling you, we can help you do stuff that isn't typical in this industry that can take you to different places, because we know that's where the industry's going. And so what's 26? I'd kick some tires. I'd lift up rocks and look under them that I hadn't looked before. And if you're tired, keep doing it. And don't stop yet. Lift up those rocks and see what's under there. And I'll finish with the kid story, right? We've got multiple clients where the kids were, as Cecil said, leaning out the front door. And all of a sudden they come and they learn this, and they're all back in the front. They're not even leaning in, they're in. And they're like, I'm going to build a generational wealth business with my family that has a significant community, employee, customer impact. And we are going to play this roll-up game that's coming, because it's, number one, much more interesting than fixing cars for us, the kids, right? And number two, that's where the industry's going anyway. So why shouldn't we, as insiders with advantage, be in that instead of ceding that opportunity to somebody else? And so I say that to all of us, guys. It's a new world that's here, whether we like it or not, it's here. So explore the options and see what they look like for you, and then make an advised decision, make a wise decision about where you want to go from 26 and beyond. Don't just be tired and walk out the front door. And please don't ignore this stuff, because what you don't know may end up costing you, more than an arm and a leg. You have no idea what's on the table.
And I see 2026 as a huge opportunity for those people that are thinking differently, that are learning things they don't know, that are building great teams and creating value proposition and a business that revolves around those things. And then I see 2026 is very difficult for those people that are, driving price and driving their business based on price and fixing cars. Okay. Mm-hmm. As the primary, I just got to fix this car so I can get the money in the door. And I really still will say that we're going to lose a ton of shops. We've seen it this year. We've seen quite a few shops disappear. Exactly. We're going to see more and more disappear. They're just going to close their doors because they didn't build value. They didn't get create what they needed to do when they had the time, the energy, and the life force in them to do it. So, all right, we want to thank you for joining us. If you didn't get your question answered, you want to ask another question or whatever, please hit up info@wearetheinstitute.com. There will also be a QR code as soon as they take our mugs off the screen. And if you'd like a no risk business evaluation, no cost, we'd be more than happy to spend some time with you and answer your questions and go over those things. And so that QR code is going to pop up here in just a second. Thank you, Michael Smith, one of my favorite people in the world. Thank the rest of you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again in a few weeks when we kind of do this thing one more time.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.